Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. I believe this is show number 101. I believe. Kyle will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is 101 because I think last week was the 100th show. I seem to recall we celebrated that, kinda, sorta, think. Kind of what we did. I'm aware we didn't really, actually have a proper party to celebrate it, but we certainly did acknowledge 100 shows of Songwriting Simplified being here on my channel and not over on Johnny's old channel. And Kyle says that I'm correct, which is good. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate it. So yeah, 101 shows on this channel is a heck of a milestone. It was really great doing the show with Jonny all of those years ago. And doing them on his channel, it was fantastic. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of really good discussions that we had in front of you guys. And whilst I do miss that, I am glad that I'm able to do it here on my own as well. But like I said, at the start of the year, I also want to have some more people on as guests. We have had Joe Gilder on here. We've had Rich Cresswell on here a few times, which has been nice to have him as a sort of semi-regular guest. But I would like to get a few more people in here as well who are songwriters, musicians, and that kind of thing, with a music theory kind of background as well, whereby we can talk through certain subjects. I am working on getting some other people in here. I'm not going to mention names yet until I know that I've got those people booked. Once I've got them booked and sorted out and committed to being on the show, then I will be certainly announcing them. So just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up as to where we're heading, generally speaking, in terms of this show in particular. Like I said, more guests, certainly want to do that. But I also have some other plans for some standalone videos as well to kind of supplement what we do here on this show. So I intend to do some things where I'm showing a little bit of Notion and also Studio One and how I use Studio One as a songwriting tool, because I certainly do use it as a songwriting tool. Those of you that know me well and have been around this show and this channel a long time, certainly since when I did the show with Jonny, will know that most of the songwriting part is all done kind of in my head, and then it's a case of transcribing that into Studio One. Well, I would actually like to show you that process of how I go about doing that, and have a song kind of already kind of well on its way to being well developed in my head, and then getting that into Studio One, so that you guys have some idea of how my songwriting process works. It is maybe a little bit different than other people, and is certainly different to my good friend Joe Gilder, where he kind of sits down and strums some chords on a guitar and starts kind of trying to hum a melody and get those kind of things going, and then we'll kind of write some lyrics as well at the same time. That's not really my process. I can be writing songs and nobody really knows it. I can be sat watching TV with my wife, or watching a film, and my brain is ticking over on an idea, mulling over a melody line and a set of chord changes and things like that. So, yeah, that's kind of a little bit of how my mental songwriting process takes place. Because, it is kind of a little bit like having a door in my head and, trying things out, trying chord changes out. That's kind of what's going on in my head, kind of what people would do, sat down at a keyboard or sat down with their guitar. I do all of that in my head, and I can be doing other tasks. I can be doing my regular day job at Presonus, or I can be out for a walk with my wife and my kids in the countryside. And my brain is actually effectively sat down at the piano and working on some chord changes and that kind of thing. But I also like to, take maybe a particular challenge as well. So sometimes I will sit down at the keyboard here and I will say, I'm going to try and create a song where all the chords are related by either a major third or a minor third. And one of my songs actually on my EP from, it's embarrassing to say this, 9 years ago, does actually do that. It's called Flying High. And that song is a little bit of kind of a romantic kind of vision, a romantic ballad about a young guy who aspires to be a great jazz musician and sees himself being, up on a stage and playing saxophone and improvising and attracting a certain young woman who he likes. And he thinks that this is going to be the way to her heart. And that's kind of what that song is all about. But all the chord changes are related by a major third. So they don't kind of progress in the normal way that you would think. I do like to sit down and kind of build a song in a completely different way to what I normally do in my head. Sometimes I'll just go, why don't I go, like A major 7, and then G flat major 7, and then D major 7, and then B major 7, and then go back round that again. So, I like to do those kind of things where I will take a challenge like that, a harmonic challenge where chord changes don't behave normally. Like I don't do 1-4-5, or, I basically say, that's a rule. No 1-4-5, no 3-6-2-5-1s, no 2-5-1s. Everything has to be related by a major third or something like that. And so that's how that particular song was worked out. It came out of a harmonic challenge. So I like to do that as well as, just kind of thinking stuff up. So Brett says he would like to see my process. So if anybody else would like me to make a video where I actually go through my process of putting a song together, then I can certainly do that. In actual fact, a long time ago, like a long time ago, I actually made a tutorial series for which the idea of that was that it was meant to be a beginner songwriting course. And I did actually have it available as something that you could buy. Unfortunately, let's just say hardly anybody actually bought it. So I ended up taking it down, and I actually took down that website. That version of my website, I took it down and got rid. And but I still have the tutorial series. So if you guys are interested and you would like to follow that particular series, it is aimed at beginners. But if you are interested and you would like to see that series, then I can make it available on this channel for free. If you would like to see it, all you got to do is just let me know. You could let me know in the comments right here in the chat, or in the comments down below if you're watching on replay, or you can email me, jonny@jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. That would be another great way to let me know if you're interested in the songwriting series. If you're interested in that, let me know, and I will make it available. My music theory series is available on this channel. It's already there. You may not have noticed it being there, but it is. It's a playlist, and it's just called, what's it called? Beginner Music Theory, something like that. So if you want to watch that series as well, it's a playlist on my channel right here. After this show, if you want to stick around, you can certainly go and check out the music theory series. Again, it's aimed at beginners, so it covers a lot of beginner ground on music theory. And if you would just like to revisit the basics, or if maybe you're brand new to music theory and that kind of thing, then that course will be for you. Again, it was a course that you could buy, and I have made it available on this channel for free. So if you would like to check it out, you can certainly do that. I would be delighted if you would take a look at it. But again, you know, like I said, it was available for sale, but it is on the channel for free. However, if you would like to make a donation, you know, because you like the series, or you think it's of value to you, or you think this show is of value to you, then in the description box below, you should find the URL details for my PayPal. You can grab that and you can paste that, and you can hit me with some dollars if you would like to. There's no obligation for anybody to do so, but it'd be really nice if you did. And I would definitely appreciate it if you did. But like I said, there's no obligation for anybody to do any of that. You don't have to donate a single cent if you don't want to, but if you would like to, that would be awesome as well. Just you being here, just you being a subscriber is fantastic, and I love you for it. But if you would like to actually send some dollars my way, PayPal is the best way to do that. Just make sure you mark it as a gift, because then PayPal don't tend to take money off me if you do that. Okay, now that we've got that 14-minute preamble out of the way, Billy Morgan, of course, was first in the door, as he usually is, and Tony Stringett was next. Bobby Booth is here. He says he's got company coming over, but he will catch the replay. Thank you very much, Bobby. I really value and appreciate your support more than you realize. You are great, and you've been around since the start, so thank you very much, Bobby. We got Ron here. He says he's here, but he'll be in and out. Cool, that's fine. Not a problem. Feel free to catch the replay for anything you may miss. Brett Marla is here. Kyle Trajuziak is here. Tony Stringer is here. Dave is here. He says, is this thing on? Testing. I do believe that we hear you nice and clear, Dave. And we got Keith from Radio Top Frumpy here as well. And we got Boris here as well. Boris Dancy. And we've got Just Bob is here, which is awesome. And who else do we have? We got Danny Taylor. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. And Just Bob says that'd be cool to make a vid about that. Yes, I would like to. Like I said, I've got the songwriting series available. If you would like it, I will put it up on the channel. Bobby says he would like to try it, and Danny says he would love to see the series. Boris says, I've made 2 songs using your discussions here about common tones in your progressions, as well as using chord inversions to build melodies. Boris, that's awesome. That is awesome, and that makes me very, very happy indeed that you have found what we talk about here on this channel sufficiently useful that you've gone and you've put it into practice, and you're making a song built on the things that we talk about here. So that's great. Thank you very much for letting me know that. Danny Taylor says that he's watching from his hospital bed. That is how dedicated he is. Danny, you are an extremely dedicated man to my channel, and I appreciate you very, very much. And especially that you're watching from your hospital bed. I wish you all the very best, my friend. I know, you've been going through a tough time, and we are all here together for you, and we love you. So stick around. And I hope that we can make your hospital stay that little bit more educational and entertaining. Edutaining, in fact. Yeah, edutaining. I like that. I like to be, contemporary and relevant, so maybe that makes me also not, edutaining, but also, I don't know, maybe contemporary. There, I've just smashed two words together. I mean, it seems to be kind of like the kind of like the new marketing way of doing things. Take two words and smack them together to make one brand new word, like contemporary relevant. Contemporary. Education, entertainment, edutainment. So I think you get it all here on this channel. Bobby Bill says company cancelled, so I'm here. Bobby, I'm very glad to have you here, my friend. And Kyle says, PayPal on the way, have a nice cup of tea or two. Thank you very, very much. That is very kind, Kyle. I appreciate it a lot. All right, has anybody got any questions about music theory, songwriting, composing, arranging, writing for orchestra, writing for strings, writing for horn section, backing vocals? If you've got any kind of questions about those kind of things, please do get them in the chat, because we are 18 minutes into the show and I would love to take your questions. And we can look at Studio One, we can look at Notion as well, because I have Notion and Notion Mobile all up and running on this computer. So we can certainly take a look at anything you would like to on those programs as well as Studio One. Now, I know not everybody is a notation person. However, notation is actually a lot easier than it looks. Trust me. Just Bob says, can you explain what the Pareto principle is and how to use it? Pareto principle. I have heard that term before, but I'm not massively familiar with what it is. Yeah, I'm not massively familiar with it, to be honest. So I'm going to have to kind of look it up. I know it has something to do with the 80-20 kind of rule. I'm fairly confident that it's related to the idea of input and output. And so I think it's something to do with 80, you put in 80%, you get 20% out, or something like that. Like something like 80% of your output might come from 20% of the time that you put in. I think it's something to do with that. I have heard it talked about. I think Graham Cochran has talked about the 80-20 Pareto principle a fair few times on the Recording Revolution when he used to run that, which he doesn't really anymore. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure who actually runs that now. I know Joe Gilder took over the channel for a year, and so he made a whole year's worth of content for the Recording Revolution. I have to admit, I'm not really sure who runs that anymore, or whether it's really actually a thing anymore. I mean, the website is still there as far as I'm aware, but I don't think anybody is making any content for it anymore. So I think the 80-20 thing talks about, I'm kind of going from memory here. I think it talks about like the amount of effort versus the result. But I'm not 100% sure how the 80 and the 20 are related to each other. But I think it's more to do with focus. Like, for example, if you really drill down and focus in on 20% of your core tasks or the core things that you want to improve. So let's say you have a list of 10 things on your list that you want to improve about your songwriting, your arranging, your music production skills, stuff like that, right? And let's say you've got 10 things on this list. And of those 10 things, you devote most of your time to just 2 of them. So maybe you give 80% of your time to 20% of what's on your list. So that's going to be 2 things on your list. And so I think the way it's meant to work is that you can achieve a lot more progress overall if you focus on specific things that really matter the most, rather than, going, okay, I need to hit all 10 of these. You go, I'm going to hit these 2 here. And by doing so, I can actually, have impact on everything else that is on the list. I think that's kind of how it's supposed to work. Not 100%, like I said, not 100% certain. It's not really a principle that I've ever really applied, to be honest. Now, I do practice. I do practice all of my instruments that I play every day. It's just something I've always done. Since I was about this tall, I have always practiced everything that I play. So, for example, I split my time between doing piano practice, between guitar practice, bass practice, and then, but I also have a drum pad and a pair of drumsticks, and I have a particular drill that I do every single day. And it's kind of a mixture of drills that I learned when I was a kid, which I've also combined with this flow chart of this like rudimental flow chart that was developed by probably one of my favorite music educators of the moment. And his name is Tommy Igoe. He is an outstanding drummer. He's amazing, but he's also a fantastic educator and a fantastic communicator. He is really, really good. And he wrote a book and a DVD called Great Hands for a Lifetime, which is all about developing stick technique, and kind of how you kind of hold your sticks and balance the sticks, and actually, use correct motions of your hands and your fingers and your wrists in order that not only do you get very, very good and even with all of the rudiments, but you also strengthen and protect the right muscle groups in your fingers, in your hands, and in your wrists to avoid injuries. So you don't get things like repetitive strain injury, which is something that drummers can have a lot, or carpal tunnel syndrome, or tennis elbow. All of these are things that afflict bass players, piano players, and drummers because we're using similar muscle groups and similar motions. And so playing the correct way and playing in a natural way every single day not only improves your skills, but maintains your skills and also protects your hands and your fingers, your wrists, your arms, your elbows, and your shoulders to make sure that all of this part of you is working optimally and working naturally. So very, very good drill. And it takes me 30 minutes. And I set a metronome and I play to that metronome without stopping, even if I make mistakes. But what I do when I make a mistake, the rule that I have is when I make a mistake. Let's say I'm doing an inverted paradiddle. Drummers will know what these are, but it's not important. I'm doing this particular rudiment. If I fluff that rudiment as I'm doing it, I have to play a correct version of that rudiment before I can move on to the next one. So let's say I do it 5 times and 4 of them are good, but the last one isn't. The last one's fluffed. I have to do 2 more good ones before I can move on to the next rudiment. But I have to keep the flow going. I cannot actually stop playing. Right? So even if I make a mistake, I don't stop playing. I keep playing. I fill the gap whilst my brain kind of resets. So I might just do double strokes. And then I will redo the rudiment twice without stopping. And if it's good on both those times, then I move on to the next one. So that's a drill that I do every day for 30 minutes on this drum pad. And I have adapted this idea for the piano, and I've adapted it for the bass as well, because those are my 3 main instruments. I do play saxophone as well. I am not very good on saxophone. I'm not professional standard saxophone. I'm okay. I'm not bad. I also play flugelhorn, and I'm maybe a little better on the flugelhorn than I am on the saxophone. But, you know, those are kind of loud instruments, and I have neighbors. So I have to think about when I practice those. So those don't get quite as much attention as everything else. And so the whole Pareto principle thing is focus on the most important things for each of your disciplines. And then, you know, kind of by doing that, you know, the rest takes care of itself. You make more progress by being focused than just being scatological. And I think that's kind of what the Pareto principle is kind of, I think that's how it applies to practice. And it certainly is how it applies to developing your skills in composing and arranging. You focus on the things that are important. Maybe they are weak points and they need to be strengthened. So maybe you'll spend a lot more time on those and not worry so much about the other things, because by spending more time, like 80% of your time on those 20%, you can improve those and strengthen those to the point where all the other stuff improves as a byproduct. But Bob, that is a great question. Like I said, I'm not super duper familiar with Pareto principle. So I don't really know a whole lot about it, to be honest. It's a good question. Let's see. Kyle says, per strings, bass longer notes, violin shorter notes, because of how long the notes need to build up inside the instrument? ? Not necessarily. Basses, like upright bass or even electric bass, they are capable of playing long notes, but they're also capable of playing short notes. If you want to hear a fantastic exponent of lots of short note playing, you got to listen to Jaco Pastorius, for example. And I'm trying to think of a tune of his. Teen Town would be a good example, where there's lots of 16th notes in that tune. And it's very, very involved. So the bass can be played very fast, and you can play with lots of very short notes. You're not governed by how long the note needs to build up with a bass instrument, or with a violin, for example. Yes, the violin has shorter strings, and therefore can play higher notes. And arguably, yes, the note does take less initial time to develop, but it doesn't mean you can't play short on a lower instrument. You can play very, very short staccato sounds on a bass. You can certainly do that. Brett says, can information be entered into Notion via MIDI keyboard, or does it have to be entered via a mouse click? Okay, you want to see Notion. Yes, I can show you how to do some things in Notion. So I am going to create a new Notion score. And we are going to go over to the screen here. And we are in Notion. And we got a completely blank score with nothing in it, including no instruments. I can click on this plus sign here, or I can click on this icon over here that says show score setup. And I can select whatever I want from all of these ranges of instruments, including saxophones, trumpets, flugelhorns, French horns, electric guitars, including 7-string. For those of you that like djent and that kind of thing. And then, of course, there's various keyboards, including organ manuals and pedals, drum set, bodhran, cymbals of all different kinds. And then we got some pitch percussion as well, including wine glasses. Oh, and whistling. And then we got some other percussion, including flexotones, ratchets, rain sticks, tambourines, church bells, champagne bottle, car horn, flower pots, hand claps. There's even a siren in here and a siren whistle, thunder sheet, wind machine, whip, and a train whistle. So you got all sorts of sounds here. But let's stick to basics just for now. We'll just add in a piano to our score and we'll go okay. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you guys can see. There we go. Nice and big on the screen. Now, you can use the palette that's on the side here and you can just enter your notes by selecting a note value and clicking it in. That's quarter notes. Let's have some eighth notes. Okay. So you can use this method. This method works just fine. But you can also record in as well. So let's go to our range tool. Let's set this guy here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into record setup. We've got our metronome on. We've got our 2-bar count in. The metronome sound, by the way, is absolutely horrible. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play some pretty random ropey stuff, not even vaguely musical or melodic. And I'm going to click this guy here. It says real-time record. And I'll explain this one here. This is step record. And I'll explain this one in just a second. And we'll stop. Now you'll see, for some reason we had some pretty horrendous latency there. I don't know what the heck happened there, but I can undo all of that and I can go back over here. I don't know why any of that was happening. All right, so we had a little bit better luck there. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay. All right. So stop. So that's one entry method. The other thing we can do here is we can also do step entry. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means when I click this guy here and I set a note value, let's say 1/8 notes. And then if I just start playing, and then we'll just turn that off. And we'll go all the way back to the beginning. Yeah, that's a good point. Brett says it's strange that it's only viewing it in treble clef. It's because my cursor is in the treble clef. So when I'm in step entry, it doesn't differentiate between which clef you want to be in. You have to tell it which clef you want to be in. Now, the good thing is we can select some of these notes here and we can shift them into we can swap the clef or the stave they're in. So I can click on this guy here and I can go Tools, Switch Staff. And then I can do the same down here. I can go back to Tools and I can go Switch Staff. And then I can do the same here. Tools, Switch Staff. And then maybe I should probably do the same here where I went quite low again. And we'll go Tools, Switch Staff. And now you can see it has put everything that should be in the bass clef is now in the bass clef. Notice though that when I was actually entering in regular real-time record mode, it does discern the split point, and the split point is middle C, which is in Notion, it is C3, which is the same as Studio One. So that's what that does. So when you are in step record mode, you need to remember to move the cursor from clef to clef or staff to staff. So if I want to enter notes into a violin part, and then I want to jump up to the flute part and enter notes in, I need to make sure that I put the cursor there and then play the notes. Otherwise, they'll be in the wrong staff or the wrong clef. So there you go. Let's see. You can play jazz on a 7-string too. Yes, you can. I have a friend that does that. So Notion only has one metronome setting. Yes, it does. Just Bob says, since Notion has guitar icons, does that mean if I plug my Gibson into my Quantum HD, it will record show the notation? No. It doesn't record audio. It records note data only. So if, for example, your Gibson that you're referring to there, if it had like a MIDI pickup that you could then connect to your interface as a MIDI instrument, and if you are able to select it in this record setup here, see, I have the Quantum HD 8 MIDI. That's the MIDI connections on the back of my Quantum HD 8. If you can connect a MIDI pickup on your guitar to the MIDI in on the Quantum HD, then yes, in theory, you can select this guy here, multi-channel guitar. And when you turn this on, each string becomes a MIDI channel. And then you select the guitar instrument in the score setup. And then when you record in step or real time, it will discern which string you're playing and the fret number and all of that business. And you could make notation using a guitar that way. But no, it doesn't record audio. It is MIDI or note data only. So, for example, if you record something in Studio One that's audio and you send it to Notion, nothing will appear in your score because Notion is not a transcribing tool. It doesn't transcribe audio into note data. Doesn't do that. That's just not its design remit. But it's a good question though, and you know, totally a completely understandable question. Let's see. So yeah, so this is Notion Mobile that we're using, by the way. Notion 6 is a bit older, has a bit of a different look and feel to it. This is Notion Mobile, which is cross-platform. You can use this on PC. I'm using this on PC. You can use it on Mac. You can use it on an Android phone. You can use it on an iPad, an iPhone, on a Chromebook. There's a lot of different platforms that you can use it on, and you get a basic orchestral library, which is, by the way, the London Symphony Orchestra, the same orchestra that recorded the Indiana Jones film scores, the Star Wars film scores, E.T., all of those great movie scores. That orchestra recorded in the same studio that those scores were recorded in, which is Abbey Road Studio in London. I worked at Abbey Road Studios briefly for like a 4-month period. I worked there. It was a totally awesome experience. And I learned I probably learned like more in 3 months than I would in 3 years being at Abbey Road Studios for that brief period. But yeah, so the sound library for Notion is the London Symphony Orchestra, recorded at Abbey Road Studios in the exact same studio that all of those great film scores were recorded in. But you also get guitars and drums recorded by Neil Zaza and Roy and Victor Wooten as well. So Victor Wooten, the great, phenomenal bass player, provided all the bass, including the upright bass and electric bass samples. His brother Roy is a fantastic drummer. He did all the drum samples. And then Neil Zaza did all the electric guitar and acoustic guitar samples as well. So there you go. That's Notion, and 3 of the ways in which you can input data. You can do it by selecting notes from the palette here and just clicking them in. You can real-time record, you can step-time record, and on a mobile device, such as an iPad, you can actually handwrite in using the handwriting tool and using an Apple Pencil 2. I have the Apple Pencil 2, and I also have an iPad and an iPad Pro with Notion Mobile on. And yes, if you purchase the feature bundle, which is only $15, that gets you the expansion sounds library, but it also gets you the handwriting tool, and then you can actually draw in your notes. If you know how to draw notes, you can draw them in, and then Notion interprets that using a scripting algorithm and turns it into beautiful notation using this notation font. There are 2 fonts. This is like the regular font. If you like different font styles, you can click on this guy here. No, that's not what I wanted to click on. View options. The notation font is standard, but I can set it to jazz as well, and you get kind of more of a kind of handwritten kind of look. This is what we call jazz font. And this is typically what you see on big band charts, this particular look, where it looks like it's been written with an ink pen. So there you go. I hope that was helpful, guys. Little whistle-stop tour through Notion Mobile there. And I think I've just worked out why I was getting that latency. My computer decided to download an update for my printer whilst I was doing that demo, and that was maxing out my RAM. So there you go. That's what was causing all that latency. I've never had latency like that before, where you play something and like at least 300 milliseconds later, the notes get input. That was weird. So yeah, that's what was going on. My computer decided to download a new update for my printer. Weird timing for it to do that. Brett says, so if you need to chart out a part that was recorded in audio, you'd have to enter it manually, either via MIDI or mouse clicks. Yes, Notion is not a transcribing tool. It will not transcribe audio to notation. It doesn't do that. So you would have to find a way to convert that audio into note data. So if you're recording in Studio One and it's like monophonic, like single line, like you sing a part and you want to convert that into a flute, for example, you can do that. You can use Melodyne to do that. Convert the audio into note data, and then of course that will show up in the score editor in Studio One. Then you can send that to Notion, and that will appear in Notion. You can do it that way. But if you're wanting to strum a guitar part or do fancy chord voicings and stuff like that, that's not going to work unless you've got something like the Melodyne Professional or something like that. If you've got Melodyne Professional that'll do monophonic stuff, then maybe it might be possible for all of that to get converted into note data, and then you can send all of that to Notion. So there are different ways around it, but yeah, Notion is not a transcribing tool. And by the way, doing it via Melodyne isn't necessarily going to be 100% foolproof either. You're still going to have to make edits in the note data. Why? Because that conversion with Melodyne can still be a little bit ratty sometimes. It's not flawless. Melodyne is fantastic. It's one of the best pitch tools in the business, but still not perfect at converting audio into note data. Particularly, it doesn't necessarily get note durations correct. And you'll find that if you sing short notes like da 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 like that into Studio One, and then you convert that into note data, and then you drag that down onto a presence track with a flute on it, you'll get long notes. You won't get short notes as you sung them, because it doesn't get those note lengths right. It's one of those limitations of Melodyne. Because technically, by using Melodyne in that way, you are technically not using it in a way that it was designed to be used. It can be used that way, but it's not technically designed to do that. We're taking advantage of the fact that Melodyne, as a byproduct of how it works, does convert audio into note data. So, bear those things in mind. It's not foolproof. It's not flawless. It's not a case of sing it, convert it, send it to Notion, and there it is, and then you print it off and hand it to your guitar player. No. You will have to do some editing, and you'll have to do some tidying up, because it's not perfect. I get people asking about that more often than you would think, actually, where people say, hey, I've actually done this. I've actually converted audio to MIDI using Melodyne, and then I've sent that to Notion. Why is the notation not the same as what I actually performed? Well, because, there is some, the way I think of it is, imagine you are an English-speaking person, and you only speak English, and you're wanting to communicate to somebody that speaks Romanian or Danish, but you don't speak Danish, and they don't speak English. They don't understand English either, but you got to find some way to communicate. So what do? You find somebody that does know both languages and ask them to translate for you, and vice versa. They will translate both sides of the conversation. In the process of that translation, going from Danish to English, English to Danish, some meaning is going to get lost in the translation. And so, especially with different grammar structures, like English has its own weird, wacky, strange grammar structure that's not necessarily completely logical, and then Danish has a completely different grammar structure and syntax, and you've got to make this square peg fit into this round hole, and then your Danish person has got to make their square peg fit into your round hole. So some is going to get lost in translation. Dave says, it seems to be best to just use MIDI editor instead of notation. Well, if you are wanting somebody to read notation, you need to give them notation to read. They're not necessarily going to read a piano roll, because not everybody can read a piano roll and know how to play that. They need some other indicator of how to play it. So most people, if they actually read anything, they'll read notation. So you need to be able to give them notation that's accurate. Or you need to be able to explain to them how it should be performed. Even if maybe it doesn't look ideal on the paper, you can give them the chart and say, hey, look, this is a guide as to how I want this performed. And then you explain or you sing how a particular phrase should go. So that they have an idea from what's on the chart to what your intention is. I've been writing arrangements for small bands, big bands, orchestras for, the better part of 35 years. And even when I'm writing arrangements for a full orchestra and I have a copyist make all the individual parts from my score, when we hold the first sight reading playthrough of my score, I'm still going to get performers asking questions about certain aspects of their parts. Like, first violins might be saying to me, hey, does this phrase here at bar 16 of rehearsal letter B, does this start with a down bow? Or are we meant to do this in one long bow? Basically going like that down the string for the whole phrase. So basically you're playing the whole thing legato with one movement of the bow rather than individual up-down motions for each note. So that's an important question. So what they need bow markings and phrase markings. You can do all of that in Notion. If you're recording the MIDI thing in using the keyboard into Notion, you can do all of that. You can put all of the notation in there, but then you'll need to go back through the score and you need to start thinking like a violin player about the phrasing and about the bowing, realizing that when they start to move that bow down the string, they are going to come to the end of the bow. The bow's not infinite. So you got to work out where we do the down bow, where we do the up bows to make your phrase make sense and be easy to play. Way back, there was software that converted MIDI data to notes through, though primitive, it worked. Notion does that. That's what Notion does. That's what just happened on the screen as I played notes. That was MIDI data being converted to notation. What you just saw, Dave, was literally that. I played notes here, notation appeared on the screen. That was MIDI data being converted to notation. So you saw that process in action, and yes, you are correct. It worked. Did it get all of my rhythms right? No, it didn't. They weren't 100% perfect. So what I would need to do is go through and make some corrections and adjustments, because these things are machines, but all they know is note on, note off. That's all they know. They don't know my performance. They don't know my articulation. So I need to go through after I've recorded my performance, and I need to go through and add my phrasing, add my articulations, add my dynamics, and correct some of the rhythmic spelling mistakes that notation software makes. Every notation software does this. This is not exclusively a Notion thing, and it certainly is not a bug in the software. It's how notation software works when you are recording live into it. Best to edit MIDI as opposed to edit notation. Depends what your end goal is. If you want the notation to be readable, then you need to edit the notation. If if your end goal is for a MIDI performance to sound good and you're not so worried about the notation aspect of it, then yeah, by all means, edit the start and the end notes in the note editor. Additionally, if you're not sure what a notational value for a particular phrase should be, like you're not sure, is this like a dotted 16th note and a 32nd note with a 16th note rest before it? How does this little phrase go? How should it be written out? If you're not 100% sure and you think you would understand how better to have that expressed in the note editor, then yes, use the note editor in Studio One to do that. and make sure you get those notes exactly where you want them. And then have a look at what they look like in the score editor, because they are symbiotic. A change you make in the note editor is updated in the score editor, and vice versa. So if you change something in the score editor, it will change in the note editor. Okay? Does Notion recognize pitch bend? Technically, no. However, there are samples for a lot of the instruments in Notion that have a pitch bend articulation. And there are symbols in Notion for pitch bend. So if you're writing a guitar part and you want pitch bend, you want to pre-bend and then release, there are symbols for that, and you can add those into your score, and then the playback engine will select those sounds, those samples for those articulations, and will play them. So you'll hear the bends, you'll hear the pre-bends, you'll hear all of that. You'll hear the whammy bar, all of that, because all of those samples have been recorded. So all it takes is using the symbols and stuff that's in the palette. You put them over the certain notes that you need them to be over. And if you're not really a notation person, you're more of a tab person, you can do this in the tab as well. And it will play back as you would expect it to, with the pitch bend up, with the pitch bend down, with the whammy bar vibrato, with different vibrato that you might want to use. All of those playing articulations are there in Notion. Rich Cresswell is here, and we are 3 minutes over, so we are at the end. Unfortunately. Sorry, Rich, you kind of walked in just as we were finishing up talking about Notion. All right, so that's the end of the show, folks. Thank you very much for being here and for your questions. Your questions, as usual, were freaking awesome. That was great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it a lot. Like I said earlier, if you want to hit PayPal, the link is in the description box below. Go grab that link, paste it in to a new tab of your browser, and if you want to send some dollars my way, or some pounds, or some euros, whatever your currency of choice is, that'd be nice. But like I said, you don't have to if you don't want to. Okay, folks, that's us done. I'm going to be away on the weekend, but I'm hoping that I'll be back in time for Sunday Night Live. So stay tuned to this channel. I will post a post in the community section of this channel to let you know whether there's going to be a show or not, depending upon if I get back in time. If I get back in time to do the show, then we'll do it for Sunday. So please kind of, keep an eye out on that section of my channel on Sunday. So hopefully I will see you on Sunday. Take care. And I will see you then, folks. Good night.